Hello, this is Kristen Wambach, and you are listening to Intentional Now podcast. Welcome. We just celebrated our Thanksgiving here in the United States. If you are situated in the good old USA, happy Thanksgiving. And how are those leftovers doing? If you're an international listener, welcome, welcome, welcome. So, my husband and I, Dawn and I, we hosted 24 people. The dishes are finally all washed. I've rearranged the furniture again, but still haven't put away the toys from all the nieces and nephews. We had a very full and festive house. So Don, he's sitting in his favorite chair after a large brunch of Thanksgiving leftovers. Yum, yum, yum. He has the remote control in his hand and he cruises from one football game to the next. But his favorite football game, a true Chicagoan at heart, is the football game played in the snow. Again, welcome, welcome. I learned something new today, which brings me directly to you, to your ears, to your door. Maybe you're driving down the road, but this is a first for me. And let me tell you more about it. It has been a great question for me just about 6 months. So, everybody, when they start a podcast or they do a podcast, everybody wants to put their best foot forward. Their first foot, their best foot. Um, and I never realized how important that was till today, and that the importance was to me, that it was important. I couldn't figure out why my podcast ranking numbers were so high, but the response from listeners was so low, and I couldn't figure that out. And that's why I am talking to you here today impromptu, because I literally had to search you out. So the numbers of the podcast, they're consistent. So this is not my first episode. I had to come back around to this first episode to make a few implementations, right? So I have known that listeners were more than first time listeners. That, some people choose not to return, but I knew by my stats and by my records that most of my listeners were repeated listeners, but I couldn't figure it out. And you know what it felt? This is what it felt like. It felt like I was repeatedly making a phone call to very dear friends. Yet I couldn't figure out why they never picked up the phone call. I have been concerned. I have been baffled. And to be honest, a little bit too much introspective about myself. We all go there. And I was also wondering, geez, how many listeners in the mass of numbers and social media will it take for me to find my tribe? Those like minded people that I'm supposed to walk with, talk with, share history and revelations. At times, I'm sure we're going to cry together. We are going to laugh together an awful lot. And we're going to share the nuances of life. Yes. Well, for those of you who are brand new, this is the first time that you've heard my voice. Welcome. Intentional Now podcast is an engaging workshop discussion on change, on purpose, and redefining what we say yes to. I've introduced myself. I'm Kristen Wambach, a spiritual entrepreneur. Yeah, I chase bold dreams. I do the work. I ask a lot of questions and I get life done. The life we're meant to live. Yes, that is my focus. The life that we are meant to live. So let's do this. That is what this podcast is about. And we ask many, many questions. Yes, I live in the place of asking questions. Why? Because answers are imperative. Yes, they are. They're imperative in my life, they're imperative in your life, and they just feed our ability to grow. So, back to my revelation for today and why I'm going all the way back to the beginning to speak to you. And this importance, I ceased from my holiday weekending to host this impromptu, I can say that word, impromptu episode. You are important to me. A little backstory, okay? This is what clinched it. This is what brought me to the aha moment. So, my numbers from France listeners, that means my podcast episode numbers, which I check through the week. It helps you as an entrepreneur figure out, well, what's the best day for you to release a new episode, the ebb and flow of how people are listening to it. That's what we do. We are an online community, correct? So, my France listeners, this was how I was able to put my finger on the data. I have an average of 626 listeners a day from France alone. So, hello to my French speaking listeners. So, that is totally amazing, and that touches my heart so dearly. Well, I was scheduled to visit France before COVID occurred, and I was to arrive right at the end of the 75th anniversary of Normandy. And it was a very, very spiritually thought out visit. But I want us to get to know each other better before we jump in there, okay? That's what the other episodes are for. So, my efforts to publish the podcast on as many hosting apps as possible, right? That's just what we do. So, today I was venturing through each one of the applications by hand to see if I could figure out anything, find clues or benefits available. So, each app where my podcast was hosted, the initial hosting place, the place that I record and download it with the software data, is on Podomatic, right? But it's hosted on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio. I can't think of them all, but it is hosted many, many places. So, what was really odd is I opened each one of those applications and searched and opened my podcast to listen and see what type of information I could retrieve. When I arrived at the Spotify app, I searched Intentional Now podcast and I noticed that it opened to the oldest episodes first. That was strange. But that repeated itself in more than one time on the application. I went, huh. So that added to the questions why my oldest episodes had such huge downloads and play numbers, while my newest episodes were, which I ardently advertise and I do all of the social media dance and I share those, but they were just creeping along kind of slowly. I couldn't figure out. Then I found this tiny little button on Spotify app that said sort. I touched it and I discovered that its setting was oldest to newest episodes, meaning it was thinking like a computer and it went to number one. I almost started to cry. I shared this. I ran in and shared it with Don. I said, this is what was happening. Those episodes are almost 4 years old. And I didn't even have intentional now name yet. I was literally helping my blog post readers keep up to date by sharing my blog post in an audio fashion. Well, they're good blog posts. But again, it's like calling your dear friends on the phone to find out that they had a baby 4 years ago. I mean, so much information is missed, right? So, my first podcast, my very first one, was sharing the audio recording of a book trailer called Pink, which is still not published. So, that's where a majority of everybody started. That's not a great place to start when it is to get to know somebody. Just at a book trailer? Not. So I was so thankful for the insight God had given me. I had to come and make this new episode today to replace my first episode. It has so many types and shadows and connotations to it when you think about it. The last was first and the first was last. Just think about it. Is if in relationships, if we met a person and our first impression of them was of their history. Mm. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't necessarily want people's first impression about me to be my history. Now, my history is important, like your history is important. It shows of how brave and courageous and what things we have overcome and changed and what we've walked through. That is great. But I want to sit down and have a cup of coffee with a person, and I want to get to know them and know the way that they converse and their style and their relationships and what's going on in their life today, now. And then their story and their history becomes so much more relevant to me. Yeah. So, how would you like to meet a person or meet yourself over 4 years ago? Well, myself 4 years ago was good, um, but I have learned so much now. And it's kind of like, oh, I require eating fresh manna, fresh bread today. What God is saying today is the communion that I want in my life, and that's what I share with my listeners. What is he doing today? How can that move me, change me, help me to overcome, help me to heal and feel empowered and feel his love and his goodness and his mercy working in my life, making it tangible, right? Tangible. I don't want to eat bread that's 4 years old. It's just not going to cut it. So I started to honor and acknowledge listeners from all over the world. I was so excited to see those records and the stats from all over the world. But when I thought about it, and I think about it today, they wouldn't hear the welcome or the hello unless they diligently listened to each and every podcast episode. So I'd read my data and go, oh, wow, there's listeners from Ireland or listeners from Australia. And I'd welcome them and I'd say something. Yet that might be 6 months away for them to run into. No, that's not going to work. So that's why I jumped in here today to talk to you, because I value that you have come here today, right? I understand that a person's history is valuable when you are learning or teaching a matter. So where they came from, how they acquired experience is very crucial. I have never read the back of a book first, but a podcast? Such a different media animal, right? Listeners, Welcome. Welcome. This is just for you. If this is the first time you have tuned in, I encourage you to touch your sort button on your app and listen to the most recent episode first. Then, when you have questions, and yeah, you will have questions, go search out the episode that offered the resources or the answers that you are in search of. They are there. They're recorded there to be a wealth, a resource to help you, to encourage you. If the purposes and the style and the unction of Intentional Now podcast call your attention, well, you have been invited divinely, and you are most welcome to be here. You are welcome to be here. Do you understand how important that was to me today, to just go back in and rewrite the history? Boy, we could talk about that for a while, couldn't we? Rewriting the history. So that is what I did today, and I'm going to drop this media file into the very first, in the first position, to let you know that I want you to start at the most recent episode, so that we can have that fresh cup of coffee and we can talk about what is on our heart today. And then we'll get to know each other and walk through our history and the story of our life together and be amazed at what each one has brought to the table. So, again, I encourage you to hit that sort button. It's important. I really do pay attention to my stats and look who's listening. Now, I have another little blessing for you, a little revelation. So, while I was sitting at the brunch table this morning, some of the episodes that I talk about, so I'm speaking from a live place, from a date, format. And I may mention sales or courses or classes, and they are only offered in a certain season. So, you stumble upon that podcast and you go, oh boy, I wish I would have heard that 4 months ago. Yeah, right? I know. So, this is what I thought, that I want you to know that I value you, and I'm attaching a 10% discount link to this episode so you will never feel like you're listening late or that it is after the fact. You are important to me. Yes. So I'm going to put that little link right there in the episode, and you can just run over and any of my resources, the pretty stuff, the classes, the courses, or the unfinished book, they're all there for you to just be blessed and for your relationship with God to just soar. He's the one who gave this idea to me. I went, God, you are so brilliant. You are absolutely brilliant. Okay, so that's there for you. Wow. See, I feel better now. I go, oh my gosh, my first listeners are need to move fast. They need to come to the front of the line. That's, I guess, what I was doing. I'm inviting you to the front of the line because what is being said today is important for both our well being, both, it's kind of like what God is doing today, what He's saying today. That matters today, right? All right. Well, you know me, I could get my soapbox out anytime and get on it, but I feel like I have said um, what I needed to say to get us all in the right place at the right time and for God to be able to speak to us in that place, right? It's good. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. It was a very important impromptu episode. I now feel like I have a clear connection with my listeners because, sometimes you pass a person once, right? and you extend your hand, you say hello, and you you just really have to lean into it and avail yourself to this is a divine opportunity. And I want to first honor God and honor what He has placed in my path to help me in this season. So we can talk about up to date matters, and we can learn from our history. And there's many episodes that you can listen to, but please go to the most recent episode. And then God will make up the difference. If we have some things to learn about each other, He'll make up the difference. But welcome. I appreciate that you're here. I feel like, now I'm finally connected. And now those 626 listeners in France, I know that you can hear me and it's up to date. It's up to date. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. This is always fun. You have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you again real soon. Bye now.